Mm-mm.
Hello, my name is Carissa Doherty. I'm here with my sister Sonya Doherty, and we're a part of Exceptional D. We're missing our third member, Dr. Jody Peacock, but we're so happy to have Dr. Michelle Peris here. She's actually local. She's in Burlington as well, and we've watched her practice change over the years, and we're so excited to sort of like be friends, be a part of like watching, and it's exciting what she's doing. She's the owner of the Poppy Clinic. She's also got this community naturopathic practice called the Wild Collective, and she has a podcast called Wild Medicine. So yeah, I can't I like watching from the outside, but I'd love to hear more about whatever you want to tell us.
Well, thanks for having me. I haven't been doing my CE late or anything and not watching you guys until all hours of the evening. The screen is looking very familiar to my screen these days. So I'm just glad I'm on the other side of the screen today.
Awesome.
Yeah, I have been a naturopathic doctor since I graduated in 2009, so 15 years, and I think I had to practice much like anybody in the beginning. I actually applied to work with you guys, and then I think for whatever reason, I ended up in Oakville. Forgive me.
That's Chris's fault.
I know, I was like,
I've been obsessed with you guys forever.
We didn't even know that until one of our graduates, because Carissa does the hiring, and she's so like, we didn't even know that. Seriously, we would have come back like if we
I hired wrong. I hired wrong, by the way. Like really wrong. I
feel like I don't even know if it was like a yes/no situation. It was just a situation. But I've loved you guys since the beginning, and ended up in Oakville at a clinic. Thought I was going to do sports medicine, which is hilarious, but that's what I did my specialty in fourth year. That was probably a big decision-making piece, and wound up pregnant very early in my practice, ended up building a perinatal and mom and baby practice early on in my career. And like many of us, did exactly what I thought our career was going to look like, right? I was going to have a successful one-on-one practice. I was going to build this out, and it was going to have balance, and it was just going to be bliss, and it wasn't going to be hard. And you end up working really hard, and I am now accepting I'm a bit of a perfectionist and overachiever, and my perfectionism and overachieving shows up in different ways. After 7 years of working as an associate, I ended up opening up the Poppy Clinic, and at that time I just felt this like really big pull to do health differently. And I think that came from a number of things. There's like my own personal story of wanting and craving community and wanting to do that for other women. But the other thing was just feeling lukewarm about my results, and not really feeling like I was getting to the real root of why women like found it so tremendously difficult to stick to the plan, or even if their metrics improved, it's not like it really improved their overall quality of life or well-being. It was like I was only taking people so far, and it could have been the nature of the way I was having conversations with patients. I was saying this to one of our colleagues, Dr. Sarah Vadbonkar, about like just really wanting to have this type of dynamic with my patients where I felt there was some therapeutic advantage to relating to their stories, so they didn't feel so alone. And I think all of those things planted seeds of like, maybe I want to do healthcare differently. And I think early in my career, I did a couple of like seasonal detoxes as a group and loved the group dynamic. And so when I was looking for a space, I wanted there to have community built into it. I wanted that to be part of it. And I remember being coached at the time and almost steered against it. Like, that's going to be really hard. That's going to be really difficult. And I was like, I love making things look intentional. So I was like, it's cool. It'll be an IV suite. If it all comes to fail, we'll buy more IV chairs. Like we'll just make it look like we did it on purpose. And so I went for it. And I converted a space in Oakville, the garage, into a community space. And I tried to make it as pretty as possible because I think it was used for like storage prior. And I pitched an idea, and I had been in practice 7 years. I had, female patients who trusted me enough to come hear me out. And I pitched a different idea for almost nothing. And it took me 2 weeks of begging people to trust me on this and join to actually bring it to life. And I want to say that because I think there's a lot of people that maybe put things out there and think that it just comes easy. It's effort, right? Changing and disrupting how you do medicine and how people think of healthcare and what that looks like. It's you have to make a case for it. And I think you have to really be behind the vision of it. And so when I finally had that moment where we sat in a circle and I had a health curriculum and I wanted to ask questions that would, instill critical thinking and diversity of thought and deep contemplative mode for them so they could start to really infuse that information and start building it in, because it seemed that I never had enough time to tell patients what they really needed to know to move the needle forward in their health. And I felt like they weren't supported. Like so many women, so many young moms had a lot of excuses. Worthy or not is not really the point. It's that they were not able to actually get the results because there seemed to be so many barriers. And I thought if we could give them enough information so that we could make a higher motivation as to why they should try and change what they're doing, and to give them different type of support, could they fundamentally execute and actually get the results that they desired. And after one evening of that, it just like filled my cup. I was like, this is it. This is what I was meant to do. This is how I'm supposed to do healthcare. I'll own, like, I want to teach fundamental health. I want to encourage critical thinking conversations to allow people to have their own internal revolution, if you will, so that they can start having an internal locus of control of wanting to take responsibility for their health and feel that their cup is full enough through social support and all other factors that they can actually see it through. And that's what we started seeing happening, is that women were taking radical responsibility. It became a lot easier to hydrate themselves consistently. And guess what? We all know they felt better, right? That they felt brave enough to maybe have that conversation with someone who was resisting dietary changes, or, what was coming up for them. Like, it's hard to take supplements. Yes, it's hard, but you're here and you're stating you want to treat and feel better. So what's the disconnect here? And I think so much has to do with what I call the real root cause of not trusting themselves, not feeling worthy, a fear of rejection, all of these things that are running, the stories are running behind the scenes, but we don't know how to express that to our practitioners, and we don't know what to do with that. So for me, what I was seeing in my visits before I had community, is women were coming back and they were like, I tried, and no one wanted to do the gluten-free thing, and so I just abandoned it. I don't want to make 2 meals. Like, it was excuse after excuse. Supplements are hard. I took it for 2 weeks. I don't know, and I was like, this is not what I got into healthcare for. I want women to live excellent, beautiful lives, ones that they're in the pulse of, that they're like proud of what they're doing, and they're serving a mission, and they're raising awesome humans. And I want them to care, and they weren't caring. And I felt like I was failing them. And so I needed a different solution. And that's really how I wound up in community. And I have a fervor. It is not easy, I'll say that. And there's a lot of burnout in that story, and we can get to that. But I truly believe that I am making a difference. And I just hosted an evening this week where we were welcoming new women into our community. And so we invited women who've been with us anywhere from 3 to 8 years. And it's crazy. Some women have been in our community for 8 years.
Amazing.
Sharing their stories. And to hear these women, it's almost hard for me to take in, but they were like, this single-handedly changed my life. When I started engaging in this community, this is what happened for me. This is what happened for my kids. This is how my life is now. And this work matters. And I will see this through. And I am working very hard to make sure that every woman knows that they have access to something like that. Because I do think, you guys deal with the chronic and the difficult, and gosh, I love that about you guys, because I send everyone in those complex spaces to you guys, because I know you have that. But when we can harmonize one-on-one excellent care with a health inspired community, when we can bridge this gap for people, they become forces for good, whatever they define that as. They get to leverage their health as an asset to doing good work in the world. And that's what I cared about. Is like, sure, maybe we correct your B12 levels, maybe we finally correct your ferritin levels after many efforts. But what are we going to do with this new level of energy? What are you going to do to be in service of? And that became one of the questions I wanted to ask. And I really believed if we gave women enough time and space and breath to sit with themselves and not feel so alone and be educated, that they would start to believe that anything is possible. And, you know, it was amazing. Some of these women probably wouldn't have spoken up before or shared, and they looked like public speakers this week. You know, it's like you really start to see them shine. And that's what I care about. That is what I'm after, is I really want women to be able to leverage their health as an asset to do good work in this world.
I guess a lot of women are the center of their community, right? Like they're moms, but they're also caregivers. They're also like taking care of their aging parents, but and they interact with their sisters, brothers. Like if you're seeing a lot of women, you would be seeing like powerhouses in their community. The ripple down effect would be massive, or no ripple down effect, or like minimal ripple down effect. So like you change your community. Now I'm thinking of all the patients I haven't sent to you, and I'm like, man, I have like 3 just in the back of my head that I should just send to your, we like what you're doing, but I don't think I'm using you. Like, I don't think I'm using your leverage because you're in our community. So
what I think for moms, like a lot of the moms that I work with who do have kids with neurodevelopmental concerns in their family, like they're so backburnered that, you know, that really speaks to me when you think about like trusting yourself or thinking you're worthy of even getting care, right? Or like prioritizing your care, and how hard it is to advocate for yourself within your own home when you're taught as a mother that your needs shouldn't be at the forefront. And like, how do you balance that interplay with children who do need you all the time, right? And that's all parents, but I just think it's interesting for me to think about that in the context of my practice.
And what's a particular stressor in that instance, because it would be so easy to let that story run your experience and totally forget that oxygen mask theory is legitimate and real, is that we cannot give what we do not have. And if we're not, you know, making ourselves at least a priority somewhat, right? And I tried to make it like, wear like a loose coat. Like it's not every week, it's once a month for 2 hours. I don't know anyone who can't find that level of commitment, you know? And so that it could be that possibility of like, you are my priority. Obviously with, you know, in those situations, there's a huge demand on those caregivers. And if we can fill their cup a little bit, the way they can then show up is just, it's fabulous. And I coached someone in the US. She works in autism spectrum and neurodiversity as well. And she started mommy groups, and they sold like hotcakes because, you know, because I think they were starting to see the value for them as well. Like she would host these little events so they could get a glimmer of what that looks like, so that then she could be like, this is where you need to hang out. And it was like a mommy club for those moms who, you know, for her and what she saw in her own family and for many of her patients, is that those are very complex family dynamics, and often the family doesn't survive it, right? There's divorce and there's all these other situations that happen as a consequence. And so what if we care for the mothers so that they can start to nurture and fill their cup, so that they can nurture in a different capacity, so that the family dynamic can stay intact, and the communication can, you know, come from a different space instead of being so depleted and burnt out. And I think sometimes we're looking for solutions and we make things a lot harder. Like sometimes you just need human connection and conversation. And it really has changed what I think about trauma and the power of storytelling, and how quickly we can move through these pieces when we have a different type of support, one that is like-minded. Like it doesn't have to be necessarily solutions oriented, like a therapist solving a problem. Sometimes we just need to like offload and have someone hold that for a minute, and have someone identify with some part of our story or whatever. Like it is incredibly advantageous to us from a therapeutic perspective to have that level of that kind of support. I truly believe that this is a part of, it needs to be part of the healthcare experience. If we want to like have long-term transformational change, it needs to be that level of prioritized. I mean, we see it in the research, right? In terms of longevity and blue zones and all, but I think we still talk about it like you should go do that, or that's a nice to have. No, it's essential on the healing journey. Like, you need this.
Yeah. I'm thinking like, I'm glad you're doing it. Like in my brain, I'm already putting it off.
Let me do it. I have a fervor. We all believe I am not treating what you guys are treating. I am happy to have you do that. So like, I think that's the lovely opportunity here, right? Is I think we all have different callings in healthcare, and being able to like trust that. Because certainly in the beginning, I was like, am I a loser and not smart because I'm just teaching fundamental health, right? Like now I'm like, no, I'm so proud that I'm that bridge. I'm so proud that I get to be that for women, because that's what I'm excellent at. That's where I seem to really make a difference.
Yeah,
What's
you,
interesting because
yeah.
the students will often come because I'm, one of not too many totally focused in the autism world, and so the students will come and they're expecting to see kids with autism and how they play, and I'm telemedicine, and I'm like, I'm training the parents, I'm educating them, and it's so in some ways boring. I love it, and I feel like a preacher on Sunday mornings. Like I love the message, and I'm not comparing my message to yours, Lord. I'm just saying like it's you gotta really do a good job of the fundamentals. And so the students are surprised because they get a totally different experience. But I'm like, if you want to make a difference in people's lives, you ensure that they know the fundamentals so that, in my case, that they can give those treatments to the kids. But you spoke at our Clinical Pearls conference, and you were a rock star. You always are, but it was just so amazing. And, as everyone's sort of, the days ending and you were our last speaker, and then all of a sudden everyone's energy was just like up. You could feel it in the room. And then on top of that was the research that you just mentioned of how powerful and how important this is, like to be part of everyone's practice in some way, right? Because I think, and I'd love your thoughts on this, like how, for those of us who aren't necessarily doing group get-togethers, how do you create the idea and the conversation around community if you are in one-on-one practice or one-on-one practice?
Yeah, it's a challenge. Like I don't even want to sugarcoat it, but I think a possible solution is just like we would refer to you, Sonya, right? Like I think of you immediately. I took a lot of your training in my early days. Of course, I would try and implement and execute, but I don't love it like you. I remember watching you speak. You're like a preacher, right? You're crying as you care about what you're doing. And it made me think of something really funny while you were sharing. But I got on an alignment call with this woman, and she was kind of triggered by the fact that we were putting out all this good content from our clinic, and she felt like no one could help her need. And so I got on this alignment call just to discuss that with her, and I was like, well, this is what I do, and so I actually think this is a better conversation for over here. And she was like, but aren't you a naturopath? Like, don't you treat everything? And I said, well, in fact, we're very clear in our clinic about staying in our zone of genius and our area of expertise so that we can do a really great job. And if it's not a good fit, we want to refer you to the right person. But I think there is this impression that we should like do all these things and it should look a certain way. And it's really difficult to be excellent at something or at everything. So why not pick and really trust that? And so I think the one thing I can encourage clinicians who are like, okay, I really do think that this is a fundamental aspect, is I think there are ways that we can collaborate and support each other in the growth of that. And so one thing might be if you feel like that patient is a good fit or is in need, and I think that's everybody, but that's another conversation for another day maybe, but it is sending them an event like we have, and let us handle that conversation for you, right? Because I will die on that hill. I will stand there and defend on how important and present that information in a way I think I have a unique gift at being able to do. Like I was distributing this program to other clinicians with the hopes that that's how we would reach more women, and it seemed to be more challenging than it was rewarding in some aspects anyways. So maybe we do have to more cross refer and say, this is, here's the evidence, here's why I think this would be particularly beneficial, here's an opportunity for you to learn more. It's not maybe where I spend my time because this is what I'm doing, but this doctor seems to have this area really figured out, and so maybe going to hear her out is one possible solution, right? Like I do think we complicate things as naturopaths in the sense of like we think it has to be harder. If clinicians feel compelled to do this in their own local community, there's just such a demand for it. It absolutely is necessary. And I think we're a great hub because we can help all things. It makes us hard to market if you're going to talk about the business side, but we fundamentally help serve a huge part of the community by providing this type of community and this foundational information. But doing it themselves is also a viable solution, and having a particular niche that they could offer it to in their area of expertise. I've built community into my one-on-one practice too. So like I've taken what I've learned and, evolved how I help people. And so we're constantly priming our patients at the value of this. We are constantly talking and speaking to the importance of what we now have identified as the fundamentals. And it's so to even answer, I tried to solve the problem in a different way. So we moved from Oakville to Burlington 2 years ago, and we chose a different space, and we reduced office space, and our whole space is almost dedicated to community. So even from when you walk in, the circle is set up. Like, I'm trying to prime your brain that like how we do healthcare is vastly different than maybe what you're familiar with. And so even through being very bold with showing them, right? Like, I put the circle out on purpose. I don't put it away. I leave it out because I want them to be like, why would she have that here? Why is I remember when we were getting licensed for our new IV location, my first inspector was like, Kono's never going to approve this. Like, where's your wall for the waiting room? And I'm like, there is no. He's like, you have to have a wall.
Why?
And I was like, there isn't one. You had to check the box, right? This is the limitations of due diligence. And so I was like, I'll get a divider. Like, what do you need? I'll make it happen. So I did that. But she was like, people won't want to do IVs. I'm like, if our marketing isn't clear, like, we're going to serve a demographic that wants communal, that feel like the community part is an essential part of the receiving the health information, right? So we've hosted like IV hours where there's conversation, right? Like we built it into demonstrating. So I think if it's a priority to you, it's like, how can you start bringing that in to articulate the value? And so when we realized how important this was, we completely shifted how our clinic appears to help articulate the value. So I think there's many ways we can refer and we can demonstrate. And I think I understand that this isn't for everybody, and it's not always easy, but it is, for me, fundamental. And I will not change my stance on that. For us, I want it to be crystal clear when you walk into our space, the prioritization of how we want you to spend your time immersed in a health solution.
You had a lot of NDs like leaning forward, like hard leaning forward. And,
Yeah.
and like Sonya was saying, like there was a vibe in the room, which we liked. Like we liked the conference, we loved it. But then you changed the energy, which I guess is the community piece you're talking about, is like, as a practitioner, we expect changes in energy, but a person can only have so much energy, and you're trying to tap the energy from the community. So like, I didn't feel it until you spoke, and then you allowed the audience to feel it. So you had a lot of interested parties in the audience. I just wonder if some of your models may pop up, not to copy, but I think a lot of people didn't know that it was a thing. I think you made it up. Like you're the community ND.
It's inspiration.
Yeah.
People are going to be inspired and motivated and take aspects of it, right? But it's
would make my job easier if people just did it, because if it became a commonplace in the conversation of how healthcare is delivered, it would make it a lot easier. I feel often I'm standing alone making an argument for something that feels totally foreign to everybody. And that is the biggest pain point in my business, is taking people who are totally unfamiliar with why they would direct resources and their time into something that is so unique compared to, I have benefits, everyone does one-on-one, so why would I even do this different? And so I hope people copy, because it will help. I've been at this for 8 years. I've protected my property. I've gone through all iterations of how this looks. And ultimately, my heart is in having better health outcomes. And if it means that more of us are doing this to have the health outcomes I think our patients really want, and then they finally understand what the investment of energy and time it would take to truly transform, like everyone would be better off. My job would be easier too if more clinicians were taking a stance on community, because then people would be like, yeah, that seems like a good idea. It's just like GLP-1s right now, right? Like it's like
Yes.
that,
Makes
right?
sense.
Everybody,
Yeah.
everyone's into it all of a sudden. We're cool with it. Say it. Let's do that for community. Like where's the promotion for that? Right? Because it will make buy-in easier. There's a huge level of resistance because what I do, I understand is unique. I'm willing to take a stand for it, but it will be easier if more of us do it.
Has anyone done it? Like, I mean, like as naturopaths, I feel like you're it, but like, has anyone done it before in any form of anything? Like, I get that there's like power
Sure.
circles, or I guess I get the religious beat. Like, I know there's prayer circles. I had a Bible group that I loved. I found a lot of power with it. Like multiple women, it was very, very powerful. Like, I get the community piece in different aspects,
Mm.
training as an athlete, team group. Like, I get these like splintering of ideas, but where did you come from? Like, how did does it exist anywhere? You just like made it up?
Yeah, I made it up.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I do think that it is happening. I don't think I'm the only one. I do think it's incredibly challenging to get people to yes. And if you're uncomfortable holding space for that, like while people arrive at a different decision and, direct their resources elsewhere, I do charge, right? Like I think it's easier. The thing is, when the money is, it's interesting. And we were talking about it a little bit today is, if something's free, people tend to not show up. So then that's a problem in its of itself, because we need people to show up to actually get the transformation. And so I do charge, and then like I want to be at a frequency in terms of currency where I'm attracting the everyday woman. So I don't ever want to be so expensive that I would not attract my avatar, because I don't want to serve like a affluent. I want the everyday woman. I literally love that. I live for it. So it's so interesting to have figured out this model. I grossly undercharged in the beginning, and I remember like other coaches in the wellness space were like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, I see the 20-year path, so you're gonna have to trust me on this. Um, I'm currently working very uh adamantly at helping women see what this is. And um this week having a retreat, it spoke for itself. Like I do think it's priced at a place where people are going to show up 100%, like they've got some skin in the game, and I think that's vitally important from a community perspective. But we have to make a very compelling argument as to why, and having women share their stories and talk through that. Like, I think we found this harmonious situation where women were like, well, this seems worth my investment. Right. So it gets very challenging to play with those metrics. And that's why I think most people quit. And so then there's not a lot of examples to prove how and why we're doing this,
Mhm.
Does that make
So,
sense?
it does. What makes me think of when you're talking and touching on different points of this is how when we spoke to Dick Tom, he has basic treatment guidelines, although Carissa just talked to him about money. So, if you guys want to learn Dick Tom's basic treatment guidelines, we might have to interview him again. Anyway,
She let me interview him on her own, and I was like, "Oh,
it was
I'm
not
interested."
intentional. You're usually not let off the leash in such a manner. But then, we talked to Dr. Christina Bajornal. She talked about the importance of always talking about people's heart and spirit and their faith, and she said that's part of every conversation I have. And Verna, right, gets Chris in trouble all the time about not putting her hands on her patients. And even Dr. Pam Thornton mentioned, like, we have to physically examine our patients. And so I feel like this is something that has to be part of our basic treatment guidelines, like talking about community and ensuring people are pursuing it, right?
Yeah, so we had a section on our treatment plan where we presented the research, we presented the advantages. It became a part of our prescription, if you will. Absolutely. To your point, like everything you just said, I agree. Like, and that's, I think, what's so beautiful about community is that there becomes these conversations for mental, emotional wellness and spiritual wellness. Like, I don't think true healing or thriving is possible without unpacking those realms, right? And so for me, and I think we all have our own way of providing that. For me, the gateway is getting them together. And then when we can get them together and they get to stay together, I think what works really well about my model is that they're together. It's a closed group for 10 months. They have 10 months together. Like, that establishes a huge amount of connection for them. And a new level of healthy reliance on something that helps them feel strong and curious and willing to have conversations. I think that's the beautiful thing, is that we're handling some potentially very difficult conversations, which in the real world right now might be very difficult. How do you learn critical thinking skills? How do you have diversity of thought? How do you have conversations that matter, where you can hold two different opinions and really
Still
trust that?
be part of the same community, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes. And that's, yeah. So, yeah, it should be on our treatment plans. We do have a
mhm,
responsibility. If we've looked at the research and we see the advantages from a cognitive decline, from a cancer outcome, from a cardiovascular outcome, if you know those, then you need to put that. And
mhm.
maybe the solution isn't Wild Collective for everyone, I would argue, but I'm highly biased. But I, if it means that they start reaching out to their friends more and intentionally build that in, I mean, that's going to make a huge impact, right? Like it makes a big, big difference. So yeah, I think from a very fundamental understanding, we could absolutely do a better job of putting it on our treatment plan and explaining why,
Mhm.
and showing them potential resources. And there are lots of resources. To your point, yes. To your point, Carissa, like
It's all backwards.
prayer groups, there's so many options, right? And there's just so much available to us, and if it's not prioritized, we just don't seek it out. So
Well, we might be like, oh, prayer groups, it must be the faith, or like a team, it must be the physical activity, or like I
right.
can see the pieces where I've been in a group, but where they almost like say that the benefit of that group is something else, like whatever you met for, but not necessarily the act of meeting, which you proved like with your presentation that it was the act of meeting and then the act of
Yeah.
being, yeah, like be there and then be there. And that was it. Like you didn't have to complicate it with like this or this or this. You just be there. And that's like, yeah. So
But I want to switch gears a little bit because I think you're such a high energy, positive, passionate person, and you're just like a lovely human. And I think that people sometimes may take for granted that this is just always your energy level. And I know you've spoke about burnout, and I've felt that as a parent, I felt that as a practitioner, and I'd love to hear anything you have to say about it, but just even advice for other practitioners who, we are working in service of other people for most of our days, right? Whether we're doctors or we're moms or we're in our community. So what would you have to say about that?
I'm not proud of my burnout story, but I will share it. It makes me emotional. I made a lot of mistakes before I got it right, and I got it really wrong. And I made mistakes, and that wound up in being investigated in a lot of things. And so there is consequences to running that machine and not taking care of ourselves. And I think that can be really difficult to grapple with, because I think we all got in this to be of service to others, but no one really talked to us what that looks like, and how to balance it all. And there are some things about our profession that I am very critical of, in terms of you know fee scheduling and like hour scheduling and all the expectations, and there really isn't a lot of support for that. And so I think a lot of us are just white knuckling our way through. And my associate alluded to it this week, and I forgot, but she was in school, and I had been in practice for I think 8 years or 9 years when she came and shadowed me for as a preceptor the first time. And I worked from 10 to 6, drank smoothies, no breaks, to fit everyone in. And she was like ready to eat her lunch. There was no lunch. We were just doing what we do, right? I've been running that machine for 8 years,
Right.
and she, like, her eyeballs, like she looked so like, is this my life? And then it was like, oh, I'm not done yet. I have 2 more hours of Wild Collective. And she was like, so, it was not uncommon for me to go 12 hours with very little breaks for myself. And I just did that. And I I lost my hearing, and I know that was from being so pushed to my absolute max. And the crazy part was how I responded to going deaf in one ear.
I
I
know
did a
this.
whole lot of nothing, I'm profoundly deaf in one ear. And I took half a day off to go to the hospital to get enough steroids to hopefully keep going. I didn't cancel any patients because I was like, where will I put them? Where will I put them? And it was debilitating for me. And now I see my new associates who are newer grads, and they're brilliant
I know
doctors.
they
And I
are.
feel this need to protect and like fight for them, because it took me having to retire my practice and go through some really difficult times, and making a mistake and getting investigated by the college and having to endure all of that to be like, who am I doing this for? My marriage isn't doing super great. My kids don't have a very connected mom. I'm working my butt off. These patients don't really seem to appreciate all the effort I'm making. They're just mad when I have to cancel a day. Like, what are we doing?
Mhm.
Seems so backwards. Talk about the oxygen mask. This seems backwards. And so I had a bit of a healing journey to go through, and I'm still profoundly deaf that never restored. But it's taken a few years, and I can confidently say that I intentionally build my schedule for hell yes opportunities, meaning like when I'm in my practice now 1 day a week or 1.5 days a week, I'm there because I'm fully invested, and I like the way I've set it up, and I've boundaried and protected my time, and I'm working with people who are far more aligned, who appreciate the help that I'm providing in the capacity that I'm providing it. I show up to, my community because that's how I want to spend my time, but I have enough white space so that I'm there for my kids. It took making a lot of mistakes. I have been incredibly burnt out. I've burnt out many times. Every spring, it seemed every spring early in my career, I would have some sort of anxiety, physical response to the level of stress and pressure. And all of my family's birthdays are within 5 weeks apart. And, in the early days, I decided I was Martha Stewart of birthdays, and I worked
You-
6 days a week. Yes. And right. And then my body would shut down, and my husband would be like, when are you going to stop this pattern? Like you know, I'm not proud. It has taken a lot of difficult moments for me to say, like, what am I doing this all for? Like, who's really benefiting? And that, it can be super controversial. You guys probably know that, but like, you know, it does make me think, like, why do I feel this need to be out of the home and in the workplace serving people that maybe don't even appreciate how hard I work, and I'm not there for like, it's all backwards some days. And I just am trying to now give myself permission to um, charge rates that are in alignment with me not feeling resentment about my practice, but then also build in free time to allow me to chart properly and make sure I do my due diligence and no mistakes are made, and show up to things that really feel like an alignment, like I'm of service, but not burning myself in the process. It's difficult, I think, to be in the health space, and I do think we probably make mistakes along the way. And I think I have been a good mentor for my associates, and like, this is how our clinic is going to take a stance. There, our associate whose focus is menopause, her wait list is really long. She's doing incredible very early on in her career. She had a sick day, and people freaked out because they already have been waiting for weeks to get in with her. And so she doesn't want to have to take a sick, like it's very difficult for us. And I was like, I think the clinic has to take a stance for you. I don't think you should have to hold that. I think people need to know that if we want our practitioners to be their best, they get days off. They get sick too. And it's a very difficult challenge, I think, for all of us. But I am working on our vocabulary as a clinic and being very clear with who we serve, how we work, and what the boundaries are. And I really want to take a better, more consistent stance on that for them, so that they don't have to have the same story I do, because it's it's a huge problem in our profession. I remember one of my friends who I know works very hard. And there was one day she came to me years ago, and she was like, I think I've lost my sense of humor and personality. Like, she was working so hard. She didn't like, people would make jokes that she would normally laugh at. She couldn't even find the humor in it. Like, it can really be depleting. And I think this is a serious issue. And um, that's why I think having conversations around what people are paying for services and how to navigate all of those aspects, what breaks look like, what charting outside of office hours looks like. It's an essential conversation for clinicians so that they can start to prepare themselves to find a balance, because I think a lot of clinicians don't make it. A lot of them retire, a lot of them drop their license and do something different, because this is not what they saw for themselves.
I'm glad you're making another model. I appreciate what you're doing. I feel like I was just thinking, like, if you worked with us and you're like 10 to 4, no eating, sounds kind of familiar. Like, I don't know, we wouldn't have helped you on your journey. We would have like
we still do that.
I know. It's easy to do.
I know. So I was like, I feel
And
bad.
then I go home and I cook modified paleo ketogenic for my kids because they're neurospicy, you know, and then I'm exhausted and I forget to take my electrolytes for my POTS. And I think naturopathic doctors need to have these conversations about wellness and fear. As Dr. Afsoon Khalili, we spoke to her earlier, she said, if we're fearful, we need to reach out to our community, right? With investigations or with, you know, stressors in around regulation, reach out. We've been through it. I've been through it. Reach out to me.
I
right?
was so ashamed. I said nothing and then made everything worse. I couldn't have done anything more wrong than how I handled that investigation. And so, to your point, the reason I talk about it is, you know, because obviously there can be a humiliation piece with that. I talk about it because I don't want anyone to go through what I just fully didn't understand. No one armored us with that conversation. It is a scary situation. It is not something we were prepared for in school. And it was a very silly mistake. Like, it wasn't, it was just an honest mistake. And it was 10 months of my life that was very challenging, and I didn't cope well. And though that was probably the height of my burnout, was trying to hold that. And, you know, I didn't trust myself for a long time afterwards, afraid of making a mistake, because most of us get into this, we just genuinely want to help people. You know, like, our heart is fully in the right place, but we're not armored with the right information. And so we do have to have these conversations so that people know where the resources are, who to reach out to, and heaven forbid you have to go through a situation.
What lawyer to call and who worked for you and all those just nuts and bolts of, but again, having a community, like making sure we
back to the same thing.
and putting your community first, right? As naturopathic doctors, like putting aside some of these things that, when you think about burnout and the patient's well-being and our well-being, like, these things need to fall away to the back that are not important for our profession. Like, we are a group of incredible human beings, and you've, Michelle, very much mastered the art of vulnerability, right? And that is so important when you're connecting with people, because it's hard to connect with people who are just, you know, perfect, and you do make it look easy. But I know, you know, parts of your story of how hard you've worked, and what you're doing is just absolute. It's exceptional. I will say it's exceptional.
Thanks for having me here.
Anything we want to part with us? Anything you want to like leave us with? I mean,
last thoughts.
I'm gonna listen to this again. It's just what you present and how deep your message and your intention and your treatment goes is just, it's like, it's a big deal. You're a big deal.
And your commitment.
Thank you. You know, that means a lot. Thank you. You know, even if it's not community where you land, I think I'd love to see naturopathic doctors trust themselves in building out a model that works in alignment for the community that they serve. And I seem to have this fervor to want to solve a problem that was coming in presenting in my office that was just not what I anticipated would be the problem I was solving, but seemed to be consistently where my patients were getting stuck. And I think far too many people get caught up in the nuance of regulation and in the nuance of all these pieces. And you do need to be legitimately, you know, aware, and you do need to do the things to make sure that you're doing everything above board. Like, that's important to me. I'm not saying that, but to stifle creativity and finding a different way to be in service to the people that came to you for help is what needs to be at the table. Like, if what was working before, one, we wouldn't have a job, but what we were doing would also be working. And so I think we need innovation and creativity. And I am proud of myself because I do move at in a way that allows for me to be brave enough to at least try and see what works. And then, you know, you get the proper legal documentation and you do what needs to be done to make sure that everyone is satisfied with how you're being of service. But we need innovation, we need creativity, and so do our patients. And I think if we're willing to be bold enough to try something different and see it through, I think most naturopathic doctors I've had the opportunity to connect with quit far before they ever get to see something come to fruition. And it's a colossal waste. It is an unfortunate situation because our patients need innovation, they need different solutions, and we need collaboration. Like, I want to refer to the person who has figured out another problem that I don't care to solve, but they do, right? And I think if we were far more collaborative, which has proven well in our clinic, that we just refer, right? I don't do hormones, Dr. Diana does. So, right. And our patients have started saying, we love the collaboration, right? We're all sharing patients. There are different times in different stages in life where we're providing this support. And I'll leave it with this, but this one woman came to Dr. Diana first. She had some joint stuff. I think she thought it was hormonal. Diana had talked to her about our metabolic program, and she tamed that. And then she just joined the Wild Collective, and she was like, you know what? I thought I was coming here and I was going to get the quintessential naturopathic experience that I'm used to. I was going to come, I was going to get my supplements, I was going to leave my trance. She was like, you guys, that is not, like, I feel so deeply supported by the team, and this is such a different solution. I was like, I know. And so I'm proud of that, because my solution might be different from your solution, but we're providing innovation in a space that it is really needed, because people are looking for something and they want a different solution, but they don't know where to go. And it's going to be on us to have to desire enough to change what's out there and what's available to people, and be brave enough to continuously show up. And that's the thing I've learned through all of these difficult challenges, is that I really do believe in what I'm doing. I really do believe I'm making a difference, and I will continue to show up. And I have to figure out concurrently how to care for myself so I don't burn out in the process. But I get closer every day. And I just want people to be brave enough to try something different and not get in their heads. There's far too many brilliant doctors out there who are afraid to show up because of all the perceived proverbial red tape that they see, instead of getting curious, because there are so many resources out there to ask people. And I think the hoop that we have to jump through is a lot bigger than we think, but we really like to hold ourselves back, and the waste is colossal. I think people need they need innovation, and we need inspired doctors to bring that forward. So that is what I would leave.
And that's part of Exceptionally. We say, the world needs naturopathic doctors more than it ever has. So naturopathic doctors like you, with these ideas that are absolutely changing lives and changing communities, because we're in your community. We know the amazing changes you're making.
We're going to come see you next month. Well, you're hosting a thing and with naturopaths.
Yeah.
We'll be there. We would love to see your place.
You'll see the circle.
Yeah.
Oh, we love you, lady. Thank you so much for taking your time today.
You guys are making a huge difference. And I watch you a lot, and I've watched you since the beginning, and to even be asked to do something with you guys is an honor and a privilege. And thank you for all the work that you do. I can't imagine it's easy to be you guys, but you are bravely, boldly, everything I'm speaking to. So thank you for being that, because it inspired me from the start.
Thank you. We missed with you, but maybe that was a part of our journey. So
the journeys are still ongoing, ladies.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, the B Town Collective.
That's okay.
I love it. All right, lady.
Awesome.
You take care. Have a good weekend.
Right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.